See, we grind from the bottom just to make it to the bottom, at the very bottom of the map. Louisiana, piranhas everywhere you're at. You gotta wear extra condom and an extra gat.
I'm clicking the chrome, click on the dome of the long Smith and the snippet, your long whiskers. You a rat. I know it's not, but I'm making it your business. Feeding them kids chickens to getting your biscuit.
In your eyes and pay attention, nigga. You f around then, don't missing. Let me take them way back when we was little. On Chippewa when Davion and Trey wasn't whittling.
It seems like Louisiana's cursed. All the young rappers coming up in the various cities, and by the way, Baton Rouge, beautiful, New Orleans, beautiful. But they can't really make it out. As soon as they get to a certain point of success or come up, they get gunned down.
Now, why is there so much hate in Baton Rouge? Where does the hate come from?
I don't know. If you go back, all Louisiana rappers, the big timers, they was ran out of Louisiana, man, because of hatred. 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 Hatred.
Over the past 20 years, Louisiana has become known as a place that consistently produces huge talents. Lil Wayne, Lil Boosie, Kevin Gates, and NBA Youngboy are the biggest, but through this 2-decade time window, countless talented artists have come out the state. In addition to being known as a hotbed of musical talent, Louisiana has also unfortunately become known for losing an alarming amount of artists on a regular basis, many early into their careers before they even have a chance to reach their full potential. So in this video, we'll take a look into the history of Louisiana, the state of superstars, fallen rappers, and wasted potential. There's one quick announcement before we get into the history of Louisiana, and that is this video was sponsored by Light Supply. Now, Light Supply has all the lighting needs you would possibly require for around the house use. LED strip lights to energize and decorate any type of space, and light and motion sensing night lights for safety and convenience in bedrooms, bathrooms, hallways, and anywhere else you could possibly need light. And now is the perfect time to purchase because for a limited time they're running a sale on their site. And all viewers from this video can use the code NSS2023 to get free shipping on any order of 2 or more products. So if you have any type of lighting needs around the house, make sure to click the link in the description and check out Light Supply. Now let's get into the video. This is part 2 of the story of Louisiana, so make sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. The last video ended in the early 2000s with the end of the late 90s No Limit and Cash Money runs. This was the period Lil Wayne started to make a name for himself as a solo artist. His first album, The Block Is Hot, had dropped near the height of the Cash Money run and went platinum. In 2000, he dropped his sophomore album, Lights Out. Then, in 2003, he followed this up with 500 Degrees, and he was looking like one of the more promising artists out of the New Orleans scene. But over in Baton Rouge, they also had a new face emerging. In the previous video, a Baton Rouge collective called The Camp was briefly mentioned. They had a small run with No Limit, but towards the end of the 90s, they had a second emergence when they added a teenage rapper called Lil Boosie to the roster and started a new run. They dropped projects like The Camp 3 and It's a Gamble and began making some noise in BR. The people embraced Boosie hard, and after the second album, CeeLo, the founder of The Camp, recognized this and decided that it was time for Boosie to start his solo career, and in 2000, Boosie dropped his debut project, Youngest of the Camp. Unfortunately, CeeLo ended up getting locked up shortly before the album dropped and would be unable to manage Boosie after this point. So in 2001, Boosie ended up signing to Pimp C's Trill Entertainment label. In 2002, he dropped his first project on the new label titled For My Thugs. On this new label, he met another up-and-coming Baton Rouge rapper called Webbie. In 2003, they released their first collab album, Ghetto Stories, and over the years, the two would grow into one of the biggest dynamic duos in hip-hop. Meanwhile, back in New Orleans, Lil Wayne was on the verge of stardom. In 2004, he dropped a project called The Carter that gained him the most serious attention yet in his new solo career. In 2005, he followed this up with Dedication 1, the first of a mixtape series that would go on to become one of the most popular ever. Then he dropped The Carter 2, which was even more popular than The Carter. By this point, Wayne was clearly a rising star. In 2006, Wayne would begin a crazy run, dropping 8 projects. He was in his zone, rapping at a high level and putting out great music, and it was literally impossible to ignore what he was doing. In the period from 2006 to 2008, Wayne would establish himself as the biggest rapper out and make a strong argument for possibly being the greatest rapper ever. While Wayne was reaching his peak, he signed another New Orleans artist who would also go on to be a legend. Currency was a dude who was known for always being able to rap, but never really took it seriously. He was from the famous Magnolia Projects, which was the home to other rappers like Juvenile and Soulja Slim, so almost everyone around the way knew him. And one day he bumped into C Murder, who told him to come to the studio. This ended up leading to Currency eventually signing with No Limit, where he did his thing for a few years, but decided the situation wasn't for him. After leaving No Limit, he planned on doing his own thing, but ended up running into Lil Wayne, making some music with him, and eventually signing to Wayne's Young Money imprint of Cash Money. He continued doing his thing, but similar to the situation with No Limit, the conditions weren't optimal at Young Money for him to reach his peak, so around 2008, he left to do his own thing. Separate from almost everything else going on, the late 2000s was also the period when a conscious rapper from New Orleans called Jay Electronica first made his name. He dropped a tape called Act 1 Eternal Sunshine, as well as 2 songs titled Exhibit A and C, and the lyrical ability he was able to show in this small collection of music had hip-hop heads everywhere anticipating what he would do next. He signed a deal with Roc Nation and then disappeared. Lil Wayne, Currency, and Jay Electronica were some of the biggest artists from New Orleans in the late 2000s era, but over in Baton Rouge, Boosie and Webbie were continuing their rise to stardom as well. In 2006, Boosie dropped 2 hit songs. One was Set It Off and the other was Wipe Me Down, featuring Fox and Webbie. These hits blew Boosie up, and Wipe Me Down helped to blow Webbie up as well. It became a big record, reaching the mainstream and peaking at 28 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. The two continued to rise, and towards the late 2000s, another Baton Rouge artist joined them. Lil Phat was an up-and-coming Baton Rouge artist on the Trill Entertainment label, who Boosie and Webbie took under their wing and collaborated with frequently. In 2007, Webbie made a song called Independent featuring both Lil Boosie and Lil Phat, and the record was huge and became the biggest song of any of their careers. The song was the perfect example of the ringtone hits this era was known for, and this same year a New Orleans artist called Hurricane Chris would drop a huge hit of this style called Ay Baby that took off nationally, peaking at number 7 on the billboards. So in the 06 to 08 era, Louisiana had big records from several different artists. Unfortunately, following the success of Independent, Boosie would end up getting booked on several charges, the most serious being murder, and would have to spend the next couple of years fighting for his freedom. Webbie followed this smash single up with his Savage Life 2 album, which was very successful, reaching number 4 on Billboard. Lil Phat would also continue to build his name up after the record, dropping several mixtapes as well as a collab project with Webbie, and it appeared that he was the next up out of Baton Rouge. Then in 2012, Lil Phat tragically lost his life at the age of 19. This was one of a growing number of misfortunes faced by Louisiana rappers, because during this time, Boosie was in prison fighting a chair, and C Murder had just been sentenced to life. Despite the misfortunes of other Louisiana rappers, this was a great time for Currency, who was finally on his own. He had made the 2009 XXL freshman cover, then dropped a string of classic projects including This Ain't No Mixtape, Jet Files, and Pilot Talk. It was during these years that he met Wiz Khalifa, and they dropped their first collab mixtape, How Fly. Through the early 10s, they dropped hits and became the voice of stoners across the world. During this period, it looked like Louisiana had yet another star in the making.
I'm just a nigga from the ghetto, but now I'm in the game and I'm ballin' like a mellow.
In 2013, a Jonesboro rapper called Lil Snupe had gotten the break rappers dream about after he handed Meek Mill a CD with his mixtape on it, and Meek shouted him out and got on the phone with him that night, eventually leading to Snoop signing with him. By April, Snoop was now the new prodigy of one of the hottest rappers in the game, And this same month, he dropped his official debut project, RNIC, which was a solid project that contained a small hit in the form of a track titled Mellow. Everything appeared to be going up for him. Then on June 20th, 2013, he was at an apartment with so-called friends when he lost his life over a dispute about a video game. This was sad news for the rap world as a whole and added on to the string of misfortune Louisiana had already been having. But on a bright note, this same year, Boosie was able to return home, having beat the most serious of his charges and served time for the lesser ones. Lil Snupe was never able to reach his superstar potential, but in the mid-10s, another Louisiana rapper would. Kevin Gates was a Baton Rouge native who had begun his career in 2007. He dropped mixtape after mixtape, building a buzz in the city, and even gaining the attention of Birdman and Lil Wayne, and getting managed by Young Money. In 2013, Gates dropped a mixtape called The Luca Brasi Story, and the project really took off, taking him to another level. Following the tape, he ended up signing a deal with Atlantic. In 2014, he made the XXL Freshman cover, and in August of that same year, he dropped a song called I Don't Get Tired and followed it up with a project called Luca Brasi 2. The project went up and was propelled by the success of I Don't Get Tired, which took off to be a Billboard Top 100 hit. By 2015, Kevin Gates was beginning to enter the mainstream, and in December, he dropped Isla, the album that would make him a full-on star. The album had two huge songs, Two Phones, the biggest hit of Kevin's career, along with Really Really, another major track. Isla debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Top 200 charts, and following the release of this project, Kevin became one of the biggest rappers in the entire game. Meanwhile, back home in Baton Rouge, more artists were seeing their careers begin to take off. Scotty Kane was one of the biggest local Baton Rouge artists in the mid-10s, racking up hundreds of thousands of views on his music videos on YouTube. Then around 2016, names like Main Music, Tech, and The Real G Money began buzzing on the scene. Over in New Orleans, names like Nino Calvin and BTY Youngin were popping in the city, but one of the more unexpected stories was the explosion of a duo called the Suicide Boys, who took advantage of the mid-10s SoundCloud boom and dropped a project called Southside Suicide. They ended up blowing up, making them some of the biggest artists in the new underground SoundCloud scene. They drew heavy inspiration from the OG Memphis sound, but also brought something new to it. If you're not familiar with the OG Memphis sound, check out part 1 of the Story of Memphis. Following their breakout year, the duo continued dropping consistently and growing steadily throughout the years. Their come up was crazy, but the biggest story of this entire era was the rise of NBA Youngboy.
Niggas say they turn me up, get off a nigga dick. Don't like the fact that now I'm blowing up, nigga, get on your shit. I got touched on next month.
NBA Youngboy was a kid from the north side of Baton Rouge who had dedicated himself to making music at an early age, and by 2015, he had established a name in the city and a spot running with a crew called TBG and rappers like Fredo Bang and G Money. But somewhere throughout this year, for reasons unknown to outsiders, Youngboy and his camp fell out with TBG and went on to do their own thing. In 2016, NBA Youngboy saw his career take off after dropping a project called 38 Baby, propelled by the title track, which racked up millions of views over the span of a few months. Following 38 Baby, NBA Youngboy passed everybody on the local Baton Rouge scene to become one of the hottest rappers on the underground rap scene, period. Immediately after 38 Baby took off in December of 2016, Youngboy was booked on charges of attempted murder and found himself in a position where he could potentially lose everything he had just begun to achieve. Fortunately, he was released in May, and in August his charges were downgraded and he walked away with only 3 years of probation. Due to the nature of media coverage, cases are always great promotion, and this case, on top of the fact that his name was already hot from 38 Baby, took his fame to another level. When he got out, he dropped a song called Untouchable, which became a huge record, hitting Billboard Top 100 and becoming the biggest hit of his career up to that point. Youngboy was being ushered into the industry, but back home, tension was brewing, and 4K Trey and TVG found themselves in a heated conflict. The real G Money was taking shots at NBA Youngboy regularly, and in August he dropped a song called Industry, which was a full-on diss aimed at Youngboy. Then about a month later in September, his ops caught him, boomed him, and unfortunately he didn't make it. He had been rising quickly, so the loss of G Money hurt the Baton Rouge music scene, but there were still more people beginning to take off. Up to this point, G's homie Fredo Bang had made a few songs, but after the passing of G, he began to take his music more seriously. Another Baton Rouge rapper called Tech had collaborated with Main Music on big songs in 2014 and 2015, but in 2017, he began dropping big songs on his own and making his presence felt on the scene. In 2018, Youngboy continued his crazy run, dropping 6 projects, with Realer and Until Death Call My Name being arguably some of the best in his catalog, with hits like Outside the Day, Valuable Pain, and Slime Belief. 2018 was also the year Fredo Bang really began to take off with songs like Father and Ooh. 40 minutes outside of Baton Rouge is a city called Bogalusa, and this city was the home of a rapper called Jaydayoungan. In 2018, Jay began gaining attention. In 2017, he had dropped a song called Slide and Freestyle that got his name out, and in 2018, he continued dropping consistently, releasing 2 projects titled 23 and Forever 23, and these 2 projects would have the majority of the biggest songs of his career, with tracks like Elimination, Dot Dot, Purge, and Catch Me in Traffic, all going on to individually run up millions of views and streams. Forever 23 dropped in late 2018, and a lot of the hits on this album didn't really start going crazy until 2019. In 2019, Jaydayoungan hit a career peak with Elimination, Dot Dot, and 23 Island all racking up tens of millions of views. It was also in 2019 that he teamed up with Young and Ace on the collab project Can't Speak on It, and this project also did well, especially the hit single Ops, which also went on to rack up tens of millions of views. Jaydayoungan was at the top of his career, but Youngboy once again found his career in jeopardy after he was locked up again in May of 2019, which was the last of a string of incidents he had found himself in over the past year, from putting his hands on females to being involved in shootouts in crowded areas. So for a large portion of the year, he sat in jail, but in August he was released. His first project back was AI Youngboy 2, one of the better projects of his catalog, with huge songs like Make No Sense and Lonely Child. Despite being the biggest artist in the new era, for some reason in 2019, Jaydayoungan and NBA Youngboy began beefing, mainly on IG, with people from Youngboy's camp taking shots at Jay and Jay taking shots back. In 2020, Jay decided to finally address his beef with YB and 4K Trey and dropped a song called 38K, but not much happened afterwards. Youngboy continued going in and out of jail and eventually found himself on house arrest. Then in 2022, a new face emerged onto the Louisiana rap scene when Rob49, a rapper from New Orleans, broke onto the scene with the song called Vulture Island and was able to get a remix with Lil Baby on it. Following this breakout hit, Rob49 continued dropping, establishing himself as a rising star and the hottest new rapper out of Louisiana. Unfortunately, in July, Louisiana lost an established star when Jaydayoungan was ambushed in his hometown and had his life claimed. This brings us to the present day. The state has faced a lot of violence and lost a huge amount of talent, but it still remains an important place in rap. Nearly 3 decades after the Cash Money and No Limit era, Louisiana is still a hotbed of musical talent. NBA Youngboy is still one of the biggest artists in the world, while smaller artists like Fredo Bang and Rob49 have thriving careers, and even older acts like Boosie and Kevin Gates are still relevant. Despite the danger and violence, Louisiana is a special place, and there's nowhere else like it.